Welcome to the Wolverine Tailgate Show, the second edition here, Michigan State. We're going to preview this game. I'm Clayton Sayfie with Chris Balas and Austin Fox. Excited to be here talking about Michigan State. It came quick, week 2 in the season here, but we're already at Halloween, so happy Halloween, everybody. Make sure to head over to thewolverine.com. Use the promo code BLUE60 if you're not a subscriber with us already, and you can get 2 months of our premium content for free. We had our Inside the Fort on Friday. We have our staff predictions, ton of good stuff going up before the game at thewolverine.com. So check us out. But guys, I mean, excitement level here for Michigan State rivalry game. Not a ton of buzz, but it's pretty exciting for Michigan fans, I think, especially after watching the performance last week.
Yeah, and something that I wrote today in the staff predictions is that you don't get too high in week 1 if you're good, and you don't get too low if you're bad. I think Michigan State, after watching their film, did some decent things at times. Granted, it was Rutgers, and but they didn't run the ball. But I thought Rocky Lombardi played a better game than I thought he did. Some of his picks were on miscommunications. I thought their defense actually played okay, given the situation they were in. 7 turnovers, guys. When you have short fields, teams are going to score on you. So it just happens. But they're going to come to play. There are a lot of guys wrote this as well with that instilled hatred in them from Mark D'Antonio, the Emperor. He is something else, man. I still have a lot of recollections about some of the things that he said, and I know that it still sits with a lot of these Michigan players and talking to them. So I think it'll be a more of a battle than people think. I don't think that Michigan State's going to roll over and die like they did under Bobby Williams when they lost 49-3, probably again before you guys were born. But I do think that Michigan has too much talent. They're probably going to pull away in this one.
So according to Chris, apparently we were not born in 2002, but no, the rivalry just feels like it should again, to be honest. When Bo Schembechler, Gary Mueller, and Lloyd Carr were the coaches at Michigan from 1969 to 2007, Michigan went 30-9 in this rivalry, and they really dominated it. And Jim Harbaugh has swung the tide on this rivalry once again. They've won 3 of the past 4, and I think it's going to be 4 out of 5 on Saturday. And honestly, it just feels like it should again. I expect a blowout. I agree with Chris that it's not going to be a 58-7 or 55-3 game or anything like that, like some people are picking. I think it could be, but I think MSU is going to play significantly better than they did this week. But when it's all said and done, I'm still expecting Michigan to win comfortably on Saturday at the Big House.
And let's be honest here, guys. Harbaugh should be 5-0 in this rivalry. You had the drop snap, which was a fluke. Michigan had that game won. You won't see that play again in your lifetimes, gentlemen. That was a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And then the monsoon game, when you had John O'Korn out there throwing 3 picks, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Turn the ball over 5 times and still have a chance to win that game at the end. In the third quarter, you lose it when you're behind because of the absolute worst rainstorm that I've ever seen in Michigan Stadium, honestly, at any point in any game. So, but it is what it is, man. Your record is what you are what your record says you are. And however, it is true that Michigan's taken control of this rivalry again, and that was one step that Jim Harbaugh needed to take when he got here.
Yeah, and Michigan players and coaches talking to the media this week, they were asked about Michigan State less than normal, I feel like, just because of, Michigan State's disappointing first week. But when they were asked, like guys like Aiden Hutchinson was like, we're not taking it for granted, even though he's 2-0 in this rivalry. But he grew up, I mean, I'm a little older than him, but we grew up when like Michigan State was really dominating the rivalry. If you go back to, 2013 and 14 with back-to-back dominations in East Lansing, I don't want to talk too much about that, but my point is I don't think they're going to get too complacent at all in this game, because a guy like Aiden Hutchinson grew up as a son of a player, a former player, dealing with Michigan State fans on a daily basis. Every Michigan player on the team has a winning record against Michigan State. Most of them half of them have never lost this game, but it doesn't go back that far. Like you said, the snap game, even 2017, it's 3 years ago. So Michigan certainly still has that in recent memory, and they have that in mind heading into this one. So we're going to get to our questions here from subscribers at thewolverine.com. Remember, you can become one. Use that promo code BLUE60 like we mentioned at the top. So we'll field some questions, a lot of them about Michigan State, a lot of them just Michigan football questions in general, starting with AR16 is wondering, Balas, do you still think we lose in Indy? And we talked about this a little bit on the video earlier in the week, but your thoughts. And he means Bloomington, I assume.
Are we looking past the Spartans here, guys? This is a rivalry game, right? This is as big as Michigan State and Rutgers here. You can't be looking past. Michigan State learned last week. You don't look past, one rivalry game, before another one. So I think it's a possibility. I do. I didn't think Indiana looked great. I didn't see much of the game. We were doing our preparation. Obviously, I watched the highlights and bits and pieces. I had Indiana and Penn State on when we were doing our podcast last week, guys, and was watching it. They only had 211 yards, but there were a lot of open receivers, and I thought Michael Penix, when he needed to, really stepped up. I think they're going to be pretty tough to deal with. I think that Michigan Michigan wins that game as of right now, but our staff predictions don't come out until the Friday before the game, so I'll let you know then. But I still think that can be a tough game, and tougher, frankly, than the game that Minnesota gave them.
Yeah. Go ahead, Austin.
Yeah, I agree with Chris. I'm not going to peg that game as a loss, even though on last week's podcast I basically said it was a toss-up and there's a decent chance that Indiana wins that game, but I'm not going to pinpoint it as a specific loss. I said that that's probably the most likely game they're to drop before the Ohio State game, because it seems like Michigan has had trouble a lot in Bloomington over the years, or at least it's had close games. Jim Harbaugh's had 2 overtime games down there in 2015. In 2017, going back to 2010, it was a game that came down to the final possession. Last year, Michigan won down there 39-14, but that was one of the few blowouts in Bloomington in recent years. So I still expect it to be a really close game, but I would not be surprised one bit if Michigan comes out on top in that one. I'm with Chris. I think we should wait a week before predicting this game and see how they play against MSU first before forecasting what's going to happen down in Bloomington on November 7th.
Yeah, it is kind of funny we're talking about India. That's the disrespect that Michigan
Nice
State.
job, Clayton. Way to lead with that Indiana question in Michigan State week.
All right, I'll try to be a little more selective here. That was the first question. So we have a question from DJ Wolverine. Who on Michigan State besides Jalen Reed do you think the Michigan defense could have trouble with? I think there's a couple playmakers. Jaden Reed is one of them, the transfer from Western Michigan, who looked really good last week, scored a couple touchdowns, had 2 fumbles. So, I mean, that's one of the things they need to clean up. But I think we're all in agreement that they're not going to be fumbling as much as they did last week. You might see, a few turnovers here from Michigan State. But I think he looked dynamic. He looked pretty good. Jalen Naylor's another kid that looked good coming off of the injury last year. The running backs, I thought Elijah Collins was going to get more run, and I think a lot of people did. But he's one of those guys that, he was the leading Big Ten leading returning rusher in yards. He was 12 yards short of 1,000 last year. So that's a big surprise when you have that guy who was really the headliner on offense. This offseason, he didn't play much. He had 9 carries for 3 yards. So they really started to use a few running backs, including a true freshman. There's not a ton on the Michigan State offense that scares me at all. Outside of those guys, if they connect and make a couple of big plays, I think they could have a little bit of success and score 17 or 21 points. But it's nothing where, there's guys that are going to score 42 points on Michigan's defense.
No, and Trey Mosley, I think, is out, the freshman, or at least he's gimpy. He hurt his leg. That's a decent receiving core. And I think Rocky Lombardi, like I said, looked a little bit better than I thought he would. He's going to be pressured a little bit more. It's going to be interesting to see the game plan if they go heavy and see if they can shorten the game, running the ball a little bit. That's what Mark D'Antonio would have done, in my opinion. See if he can line up some tight ends and run right at that Michigan smaller defensive line, smaller linebackers, and see if he can grind out 4 yards and just churn clock and shorten the game. We'll see what Mel Tucker's game plan is. But other than that, there's nobody that scares you. They don't have great team speed. Their offensive line looked terrible. Frankly, Rutgers' interior defensive line just mauled those guys. They were getting pressure almost all the time. So we're going to see a lot of 3-step drops from Rocky Lombardi. And if you do, I think 2 of the plays that they scored on Michigan State should have been 12-yard gains, but missed tackles in man coverage allowed those kids to escape and score long touchdowns. So I don't think that'll be the case. That's one thing that Don Brown defenses really do well, is tackle, and we've seen that at the corner position. Vince Gray has been good at it. Jamon Green was really the pleasant surprise last week at corner. I thought he was great, and watching him in coverage was probably the surprise on either side of the ball for me. So DJ Turner was banged up last week. It sounds like he's going to be back, so they'll have another cornerback that they can lean on a little bit. I think he had a solid fall from everything that we've been listening to, but that to me is the big question mark. And I'm with you, man. What happened to Elijah Collins? Somebody said that he came in out of shape, and it's very clear to me that, the shutdown, the Michigan State shutdown, and you can't blame them with the COVID thing. I think they shut down for 14 days. That Michigan is ahead in terms of the physical conditioning and in terms of the consistency of what they were able to do and continue to practice. I think that's going to show, and I think that's something that's going to probably show even more down the stretch here in this game on Saturday.
When you look up and down MSU skill possession players at running back and receiver, there is honestly almost nobody that scares you. I think Jaden Reed is yeah, exactly. Jaden Reed is the main name to throw out there, the redshirt sophomore transfer from Western Michigan. Clayton said it, but he did have a huge day on Saturday, 128 yards. He had almost 800 as a freshman 2 years ago, so I think he's really the main guy that Michigan's defensive backs need to key in on. If you shut him down, I think you're going to have a very successful day defensively. MSU's running game looked like it could have been a strength coming into the year. I spoke with Paul Konendijk of SpartanMag.com the other day, and they really didn't have many good things to say about Elijah Collins, the guy who rushed for 988 yards last year. It sounds like complacency was a little bit of an issue with him, and as a result, he barely got any carries on Saturday. MSU as a team averaged 1.3 yards per carry against Rutgers on the ground, so I really don't see them having much success running the ball against Michigan on Saturday. So again, as long as Michigan's DBs cover Jaden Reed and contain him, I really think it'll be a very successful day defensively for Michigan on Saturday.
Yeah, and what you just said, I think that's kind of my point too, is Rutgers had trouble running the ball, or Michigan State had trouble running the ball against Rutgers. Michigan sees that. They're going to, and this is a Michigan team coming off a game where the run defense was the one negative, right, that everyone's talking about. So that's going to be drilled in their heads this week. I don't think Michigan State's going to have success running the ball. And what that does is that allows Don Brown to start to try to confuse Rocky Lombardi, start bringing guys like Michael Barrett, like we saw. Tanner Morgan didn't even see him coming on that one where he forced the fumble. So Don Brown's good at that, bringing guys when they're not showing, dropping them when they're showing. I mean, you could see Josh Ross get another interception on something like that. If they're not able to run the ball, Rocky Lombardi's going to be in 3rd and 9, 2nd and 11 type situations. And then that's where Don Brown really thrives, where he just lets his guys pin their ears back. So that's certainly going to be something to watch. I don't think they win this game if they can't rush the ball.
I don't think they win this game if they can rush the ball a little bit, to be honest with you.
I was going to say, I mean,
I'm not sure that their defense is going to be able to stop Michigan. So interesting story on that Barrett thing, Clay. He wasn't supposed to be the guy on that blitz, from what we've heard. And Michael Barrett had to talk Don Brown into saying, hey, man, let me come and let me get there and let me show you. And, man, what an impact. So pretty cool little story there. In another area about Don Brown, man, the guy listens to his players, and that's why his players love him so much. He's a guy that you really want to see succeed, Don Brown, because he is, like Jim Harbaugh said, he's a great football coach. He does have to shore up some things, obviously, against the big teams on the schedule, but I thought that was a pretty cool story. Michael Barrett, and what a game he had. I think he'll be a factor on Saturday as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I didn't even know that. So,
yep.
A good anecdote there on Michael Barrett. He is going to have a big season. I mean, he flies around to the football. I thought Cam McGrone could have played a little bit better in the linebacking core. Josh Ross, good to have him back. And the linebackers, they'll only get better, in my opinion, throughout the season. Here's a question from Speed Boys. He's wondering, do you expect Michigan to continue to rotate running backs in this game or go with more of a hot hand approach? And it's funny, you look at the snap counts, and it was like, okay, Blake Corum, that was the surprise that he was going to have the most snaps. Hassan Haskins played 7 snaps, but he had 6 carries and the 2 touchdowns. So he had, 2 touchdowns on 7 just total snaps. Charbonnet played quite a bit, but we didn't see him there in really the second quarter. So at some point, I think you got to go with a hot hand. But for the opener, it's like get everyone in, show Donovan Edwards, a recruit, that you're going to get these freshmen in right away, and then find your hot hand throughout the season. But it's good they have options, especially in a year like this when you're seeing guys test positive. Trevor Lawrence from Clemson, Wisconsin shut down. Good to have options at running back.
How about that too, man? You get a 70-yard touchdown and then you don't touch the ball again. It was bizarre, and But that just goes to show you the stable of backs they have and the guys that they trust on that team. And I do think Blake Corum has the highest ceiling out of all of them, guys. And we talked about this. The first time you see him catch the ball and run with it, you're like, we haven't seen that yet from a running back. That's got to be Blake Corum, and it certainly was. So Chris Evans is going to be in the mix. He needs to hang on to the ball. I think they're going to shorten it up a little as the year goes on, and I think they need to, man, because you have to allow guys to get into a rhythm a little bit here. You can't just, okay, two carries here, 2 carries there, 2 carries here, 2 carries there. Guys need to be able to see things. But hey, it worked in the first game. And the one good thing, somebody asked on the board in our chat the other day, are these guys going to get jealous of each other and get pissed off if they don't get their carries? No, these are good kids. They don't have that mentality. And I think that's a huge thing for this group. But I would expect them to shorten the rotation a little bit. Of course, if the game starts getting away from Michigan State, you're going to see more and more guys get carries.
I know a lot of people are expecting them to kind of shorten that rotation, but man, when just looking at the 4, it's hard to figure out one guy who would kind of get kicked out of the equation. I think Charbonnet and Haskins are both going to be huge factors all year. I think Corum will as well because of his speed. You mentioned the Chris Evans fumble. If somebody is kind of going to get their role minimized, I think it would be due to fumbling. We saw that early last year. Christian Turner was dealing with fumbles and ineffectiveness, and then we really didn't see him the rest of the year. So Chris Evans especially has to hold on to that ball. It was weird looking at the snap counts. Hassan Haskins as well played 7 snaps that entire game last Saturday, and yet he rushed for 66 yards, or he had the 66-yard run, and he rushed for 80 yards on the day with 2 touchdowns on just 7 snaps. So I don't think these guys are going to deal with jealousy or anything like that. Like Chris said, I think that it's a really, really connected unit. And, hey, if it works, I'm all for it, man. I'm all for rotating backs if it continues winning games and if it continues we continue to see these guys having success on the ground the way they did on Saturday.
Yeah, and Hassan Haskins is this year's designated touchdown guy again in that Wildcat, which I don't like, frankly. But watch for Ben Mason, too. I bet they gave him a touch inside the 5 or the 10 this year just because of the selflessness. He was a huge part of the running game last week. They're going to want to get him a touchdown or 2 at some point if they get up, or even if they don't. You know, of course, if he fumbles like he did.
He scored last week.
Yeah, he did. But you're gonna see him get a couple carries here and there too as well. Watch for that.
Definitely. And they're setting stuff up. I mean, I know they love the Ben Mason. Harbaugh is probably so pumped that, like, we're going to run the spread. All right, I'll run the spread, everybody, but I'm still going to have a fullback. And, Bo is, smiling about that too, right? Right,
yeah.
When he took
there are power principles in there, and that's a guy that you need on the field with that physicality, man. He's the plumber in there. He's just creating holes all over the place.
Yeah, he was incredible. Eric Matt is wondering when Dax Hill is healthy, do you expect to see him cover the other team's top wide receiver, similar to what they were doing in the first half against Bateman? He seemed to shut him down in the first half before exiting the game. When Bateman was in the slot, I saw him over him a lot. And I think that's the right idea. And then you could even they brought in even Makari Page a couple times in before Dax got hurt. And then he was kind of playing, like, Dax would go to the nickel and he'd play at safety. So you have to do it, especially if there's a game where you are getting burned early on. Then you got to kind of use that break glass in case of emergency and play that card,
Yeah, and we predicted it, and we'd heard before the game that, hey, if that were to you're going to see Hill on Bateman quite a bit, and we did. And he is one of the best cover corners on this team, even though he's playing safety. They're going to find several different ways to use him, and that'll be the case again. You don't have a choice. I don't think Vince Gray's a great cover corner. I think he's adequate. I think he's a good number 2 guy. I think he does a lot of things well. I don't think that's his forte, the quick twitch, and we've said that all along. So I think you're going to have to rely on Daxton Hill in that role at times, and we'll see more of that. We are hearing positive things about him. We did hear that it was an upper body injury, but that he didn't have a concussion. So there's hope, and they expect him to play against Michigan State. So they could probably get by without him in this game, let's be honest, but you need him getting more and more experience in there. Jim Harbaugh called him, I think, his most talented player probably on this team. So you're going to see more and more of him in that role and in several different roles on this team going forward.
One luxury the Michigan defense will have over the next month or so is that they're really not going to face any elite, top-notch receivers between now and that Ohio State game on December 12th. Rashad Bateman was really the name everybody was pointing to early in the year as a huge test for this Michigan secondary, and I think it's safe to say they passed it. So guys like Vincent Gray and Jamon Green will have a lot of time to shore up their game and get better and better between now and Ohio State. And then by the time that game rolls around, you will be going up against some of the best receivers in the country, and Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson and some of their freshmen. So I'm excited to see this group progress. I think we will see Daxton Hill a lot on the opposing team's best receiver. But, man, you just look at Penn State, and they really don't have any guys on the outside who scare you in a big way. Jahan Dotson's a decent receiver, but he's not quite on the same level that Ohio State's are. Same with Wisconsin. Danny Davis and Kendrick Pryor are good receivers, but they're not quite on the same level that Olave and Garrett Wilson are. So we'll really see how far this Michigan secondary has come when they play Ohio State on December 12th.
Not to bring up Indiana again, but Whop Fillier is a pretty good receiver.
Right.
Yeah,
I was going to say that.
Yeah, he's one of the few I think has to be thrown into that mix as well.
And Freifogel, and when their tight ends catching balls, instead of letting him go through his hands like he did at the end of that game, man, they've got a formidable trio. And again, they were getting open, guys. That's going to be a challenge for Michigan, I'm telling you. I pegged that one before the season, and I said it wouldn't shock me at all if Michigan lost. I think they win that game, but again, let's get by this one first and see what happens. It's a great trip, though, man. I love going down to Hoosier Land.
Yeah, that will be a good game. But yeah, let's not look ahead Michigan State past Michigan State anymore. This is a great question. MGO Blue A. Should we expect a Jim Harbaugh to Jeff Schwartz Tucker at tomorrow's post-game handshake? So whenever I come across this one on YouTube, I have to watch it. It's the Jim Harbaugh at Ford Field playing against the Lions with Jim Schwartz. The handshake after the game, the 49ers get the win. Harbaugh slaps him too hard on the back. And Schwartz is a fiery guy. I actually like Jeff Schwartz. Jim Schwartz. Yeah. And he comes after him after the game, and Harbaugh was just focused on getting in the tunnel, and there was a big little scuffle. It got broken up. And then Harbaugh later apologized and said, hey, I did come in a little hard on the handshake and maybe a back slap, but I don't think we'll see it just because he has learned from that. He said that, but man, just everyone should watch that video after this.
Yeah, to me, he finally got it about Mark D'Antonio. I don't think he understood how much hatred Mark D'Antonio had for him. And Jim always talked about respect and everything else, but then D'Antonio finally got under his skin, after getting a couple of huge breaks in the first 3 games of the series to win 2 of them. And Harbaugh finally got it. And you could tell after that game last year when he had the ball and he shook D'Antonio's hand, and he had called him out on Twitter, in different ways. I don't remember exactly what he said, but that was the moment that a lot of Michigan fans had been waiting for. Okay, you don't understand this guy and his hatred for you, and you need to respond accordingly. And I think he finally did, and he got it. And when he threw that pass to Cornelius Johnson in the RPO to end that game 44-10 last year, I think, okay, that's not something that you normally see a Michigan team do, but we've seen it from Jim Harbaugh in the past, and you were okay with it, man. It's like, okay, finally, this guy gets it, and I don't think you're going to see Jim Harbaugh do the same thing to Mel Tucker. I don't think there's anything personal there between these two guys yet, and Tucker certainly hasn't shot his mouth off or anything like that, but I think that Jim Harbaugh understands now that, okay, we've got it back, we're not giving it back.
I think it's worth talking about the 2018 game, too, the pregame stunt that D'Antonio pulled before that one. I'll never forget the following Monday at Schembechler Hall when Jim Harbaugh said, I'm going to use Coach D'Antonio's own words against them. It's not a product of their team, but a product of their program. And he was spot on when he said that. Yeah. It really reminded me of the Harbaugh from 2009 when he played USC and Pete Carroll in the What's Your Deal game, slapping Pete Carroll on the back after that one. So I'm with Chris. I don't think we're going to see anything crazy in the post-game handshake between him and Mel Tucker on Saturday. But I'll be honest, I would not be opposed to it. But I don't think it's going to happen.
In the COVID world, too hard of an elbow bump maybe will be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hey, Mel's in good shape, man. That dude, that dude could probably take some people. So
yeah. I wouldn't rule Harbaugh out in a fight, but Mel, he is in good shape, and Harbaugh was talking with Stoney and Jansen this week and said he really does respect Mel Tucker, and they had some 30-some calls in the offseason over Zoom, and he said Mel Tucker was right aligned with him on trying to get the season back, and he liked a lot of his ideas that they were implementing when those coaches got together, and seemed to be the source of a ton of random leaks on the whole season thing. But so he's got respect for him. At the same time, he knows to keep momentum going in this rivalry, and just to have your team rolling. You might have to score a little touchdown late on him, but we'll
Maybe.
see. The last question will be which one of these three interior D linemen, Chris Hinton, Donovan Jeter, or Mr. Germany, Julius Welskoff, will show out against Sparty's O-line, or is the answer none of the above? I think that, Jeter and Welskoff played okay, coming in. Chris Hinton needs to show me a little bit more, so I'll point to him and say that maybe he has a breakout game after a solid first game, but you really wanted to see him take that big next step.
And I think if anybody's going to get to the quarterback, it's Welskoff. I'm not real impressed with. I mean, Jeter still plays too high. Hinton will get there, but he still plays a little too high, and he's a big dude, man. He's tall. Needs to add more of a butt, as those defensive players and coaches like to say. He needs that bigger butt. But I would expect a Welskoff, who I thought really did some nice bull rushing against Minnesota, got to the quarterback one time. I think he could be disruptive in there against that offensive line, which was a sieve against Rutgers. But they had a couple players in there, including Mike Dwumfor, Michigan castoff, who was disruptive. So it's going to be tough for Michigan State, man. Let's be honest here with the blitzes, the array of blitzes, and the new looks that Don Brown's probably going to pull out for this game. They're going to have to get the ball out quickly, or Lombardi's going to be he's going to get killed back there. So I would expect their game plan to include a lot of maybe 50-50 balls on deep balls and getting the ball out as quickly as possible in order to combat that pass rush.
Yeah, to answer this question, I think you could go with any of the three, Hinton, Jeter, or Welschoff. I think this Michigan defensive line is going to have a field day on Saturday. They had 8 tackles for loss on Saturday against Minnesota, and everybody talks about how Minnesota was missing 2 starting offensive linemen, but at the same time, they did bring back 3 key experienced starters. So I think this MSU offensive line is going to be significantly worse than Minnesota's was last week. They're starting all veterans on it, all redshirt juniors and fifth-year seniors, but it's just not a good group. We saw it on Saturday. We saw it last year. So I expect Hutchinson and Pay in that interior to tee off, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see multiple sacks and several tackles for loss. It's going to be hard to see MSU having any success whatsoever blocking Michigan's defensive front on Saturday.
Last thing really quickly, in case you missed our staff picks, let's just give our pick here. I got 52-6 Michigan. I think it's going to be a long day for Michigan State. Rocky Lombardi, Michigan's going to pin their ears back with guys like Kwity Paye and Aiden Hutchinson, and then the linebackers getting after Lombardi. It's going to be a long day for Michigan State.
Yeah, 38-10. I think Michigan State's going to try to shorten the game, and I think they probably will a little bit. I don't think they'll run the ball very well, but I think they'll do some things in the flats and try to get the ball in the hands of the receivers a little bit more, even in a running game type of way. So, but I still think Michigan pulls away.
Yeah, I've got Michigan winning 41-10. I think they're going to lead throughout. I think they're going to control the game throughout. And really, everybody seems to be in the same boat on this one. The spread is 24.5. I think that's pretty accurate. I don't think it's going to be a complete destruction like some people are expecting, but the real question in this one is whether or not Jim Harbaugh will keep his foot on the gas once the fourth quarter rolls around.
All right, that is our show, the Wolverine Tailgate Show. Remember to check out our post-game coverage at thewolverine.com. We'll have some free stuff, some premium stuff. So to read that premium stuff, use the promo code BLUE60. Get 2 months of that premium content for free. Enjoy the game, everybody.